the same parents turn the back. So the prodigal son groans, lost and all alone. No fatted calf, no ring, no robe, no welcome embrace. He's in double jeopardy, scorned by his family, caught between a rock and a real hard place. So recovery is now the hardest thing for him to face. For all the pain he put you through and all them stupid things he do, you know the boy's sorry. He's so sorry. He sell your gas tank to buy crack, but this time you forget that and stand up by he. Stand up with he. And if he never hug you and tell you thanks, well this calypso is the medium we used to say, Frank, how much we love you.
New remedy for the healthy function of the nerves in the feet and legs.
Some cocaine addicts will do like we and make a clean switch. I am my brother's keeper. I want you to know I am my brother's keeper. Sing it, man. Till I die like gold. Good call. Till I die like gold. Plenty fathers not doing the work in we society. Drugs and crime are just two byproducts of the social malady. When home's not in order, the communities suffer, then the country has the ripple effect pans out. It's a bottomless spiral to the morgue and hospital. If we let this silent scream become a shout, the candle go cost more than the funeral, no doubt. For all the pain we put you through and all them dirty things we do, Trinbago, we sorry. We so sorry. We don't know who bring the crack, but please don't turn your back. Just stand up with we. Stand up with we. And if we never come to you and say thanks, well this calypso is the medium we used to say, Frank, how much we love you. I pray that my testimony will be the bridge across which more alcoholics will do like me and make a clean switch. I am my brother's keeper. Society must be your brother's keeper. Oh, mama. To all my brothers and sisters out there, stay strong. Love you.
Ion Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Reality radio at its best, where every life is a biography.
Sundays at 10 a.m. and exclusively on 95.5 FM.
And streamed live on the Ion Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Destiny in 2023. We are all destined to become the person we decide to be. Fortune, fate, future, lot, the inevitable. Destiny.
Lord, you are my destiny.
Destiny is truly our character, and once
Ion Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Reality radio at its best, where every life is a biography.
Sundays at 10 a.m. and exclusively on 95.5 FM.
And streamed live on the Ion Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to Ion Dependency. Right here on 95.5 FM, live on the Ion Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel. Good morning, Natasha.
Good morning, Gus. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago, and happy International Men's Day to you.
Happy International Men's Day to you. Thank you very much. And to you out there, thank you very much once again for your continued love and support for Independency. This morning, we don't normally happen, but we have a double feature this morning. So in the first hour, we will be speaking with Mr. Adrian Alexander coming under the auspices of the Ministry of Gender
and Child
Development, the Gender Affairs Unit. And because of looking at two areas, we're starting this journey. And today, being International Men's Day, the Gender Affairs Ministry decided to host this program here to understand issues affecting men in Trinidad and Tobago. And in the second hour, we look at the Ministry of National Security. And the Minister of National Security will be in with us this morning as well. As you know, what happened, crime now has now been declared a national health emergency. And just as the Ministry of Health did during the COVID pandemic, by keeping the citizens updated on ongoing matters, that was during the COVID, so now the ministry has undertaken to do that, so that the minister will be here with us this morning to do just that. So we have a very interesting journey for you this morning.
Indeed. And as we commemorate International Men's Day, which is celebrated every 19th of November, just a reminder that this commemoration was in fact started by a Trinidadian man. Dr. Jerome Tiluxing conceptualized the event or the commemoration, and in light of that, we, as Garth mentioned, we're talking with Adrian Alexander this morning about labor exploitation and how that primarily affects men. And although there is a link with labor trafficking, labor exploitation and labor trafficking are two different things, but we're going to share some videos as well to explain what labor exploitation is, and Adrian will help us to, I guess, identify how it manifests in Trinidad and Tobago, because it is happening here, and we need to acknowledge it and, come up with ways to prevent it from happening and to allow the men in our lives to contribute as they should to our families, communities, and society.
Yes, and the theme this year is Zero Male Suicide.
Yep.
So without further ado, we bring in Adrian Alexander, who will tell you his purpose here this morning. And we can attest that Adrian has been in the field for years, championing these causes, and president of Free the Slaves. Good morning, Adrian.
Hi, Garth. Good morning. Good morning, Natasha.
Morning.
Happy International Men's Day to you, Garth, and to all your male listeners and viewers via social media.
Thank you very much for joining us, Adrian. First, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you think the significance of International Men's Day is for you?
Oh, thanks so much. But Natasha, for me, I've been kind of like on the outskirts and interacting with some of the local champions on men's issues for a number of years. So like with connecting with Jerome Tiluxing, who you referenced as one of the persons who's really expanded International Men's Day and brought it to this global level, I see that we need to try to bring to some sort of resolution the challenges that men and boys in particular are facing. One of the things that God mentioned is zero male suicide is the theme for 2023. And the global statistics show, and even the national statistics, Natasha, show that men commit or die by suicide far more frequently than women. Yeah. So one of the most recent statistics said 79, let's say 80%, just round it up to 80% of the deaths by suicide in Trinidad and Tobago were of men. All right. And that's over the last 4 or 5 years. So it's a crisis. If we had the same situation taking place with those types of stats in any other area, we would see this as a crisis. And there's a direct link to men and work and understanding their purpose as providers and supporters of their families and so forth, to that loss of work, that loss of hope, that depression and that hopelessness and that helplessness. And sometimes, if it's not supported, if men don't find the type of help that they need in those very critical moments, they can make the unfortunate choices, which may not seem like a choice at the time, and commit some form of self-harm. So we have a lot of these linkages taking place, and I really want to see International Men's Day become an international day recognized by the United Nations. I know there's been a lot of pushback on things of that nature. When we look at what's happening in terms of boys' education and their academic accomplishments or lack thereof over the last few decades, the public health emergency or the public health crisis that takes place with the death of our boys and our men in our nation every year, 600 plus murders, and 90 or more percent of them are going to be our young men and boys. So we must take this seriously. Yes, there's a lot of talk about, men have had all of the advantages all along, but we've turned a corner. And I think if we look objectively at what's taking place, we will know and understand that we have to step in and do something to help our men and boys.
Yes, Adrian,
Agreed.
well said,
Yeah,
well said.
agreed.
Because our boys, especially, are being, annihilated, so to speak, with a lot of, and we just can't wrap our minds around why, our young men choose to kill each other. It's mind blowing, and I see these videos being shared by them almost every day with the 6 and the 7 and all of these things, and our men are in crisis, our young men are in crisis, and if we continue like this, pretty soon after our generation there'll be no more, of us in Trinidad and Tobago. So we really have to pay attention to this, and again, this is why the Minister of National Security will be in with us this morning. But we're looking at male suicides, and there must be a reason for them to come up with this theme, zero male suicides. Could you elaborate?
Correct. And again, it goes right back to the global statistics. Here, of course, as I mentioned, we have like 80% of the suicides are actually with male victims. And it's similar across the world. In our region, we're probably second behind Guyana. And there's a huge distance between us and other territories like Barbados, Antigua, Barbuda, Jamaica, and so on. So for us in Trinidad and Tobago, we must decide to take this seriously and really try to identify the causes that are leading our men to die by their own hands. Globally, it's the same thing. And I'm not sure if you heard, Garth, but there's actually a Caribbean thrust for observing male International Men's Day. So over the last few days, they've been in Grenada. A gentleman from Tobago, Michael Stewart, I'm sure you know him or you know of him. He's like leading that charge for the region, and they've been having some sessions with government and young men, incarcerated men in Grenada, and they brought that together over the last 4 or 5 days. So it's going to be culminating today. So it shows us that it's not just here in Trinidad and Tobago, but also regionally and globally that these things are being taken seriously.
Well, that's good to hear. I feel as a woman, this is my contribution to the conversation. I feel like a lot of the issues that men face can be solved with, if you take a look at the feminist movement and that solidarity and community that women tend to form around certain issues, I think that is lacking among the male population. So if you all could get that down, take a page out of the feminist book and really organize and around the community of men, who are facing these issues, I think we can go a long way. And of course with women's support, because we are here to support you.
Correct, correct. Everybody is in on this because our husbands, our sons, our fathers, they all mean a lot to us. So women, men, boys, and girls, we are all in this together. God?
Now, Adrian, the definitions. We hear about forced labor, on fighting exploitation, because that's part of. We have a number. Let me just get to the point. We have a number of unscrupulous characters in this country here who enslave our men, and because of people tend to think that women are trafficked as alone, men are trafficked too, and there are some people who have, especially the migrant population, working for next to nothing or nothing at all, and taking total advantage of them because they know that they are some of them are undocumented, and these unscrupulous people will drive in their palaces and mansions in their fancy cars, knowing full well that their labor or the people that they enslave are just that, slaves. Could you give us a definition so people can understand?
Sure, Garth, and that's a great question because the terminology can be confusing. So I know the Gender and Child Affairs Division want us to highlight the issue of labor exploitation that affects men, right? So let's look at that term first. So labor exploitation is a really broad term. Some entities and organizations may have tried to define it, but in terms of an internationally agreed definition, it doesn't really exist per se. So it's a broad terminology, and it really serves as like an umbrella term. So you have things like where an employer would benefit unethically from treating their employees in a way where they don't pay fair wages, they make them work long hours, they don't pay overtime, the conditions may be dangerous or harmful under which the employees are working, and they may be actually violating workers' rights or legislation, orders, regulations that govern how workers should be treated. So it's a very broad. You have a lot of unfair treatment that really is at the root of the terminology of labor exploitation. Labor trafficking, however, has a definition. When you're thinking about trafficking in persons under the Palermo Protocol of the year 2000, you're thinking along the lines of our definition, even mirrored here in our Trafficking in Persons Act. You're thinking recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receiving of an individual. And if it's an adult, that is done by means of abduction or fraud or deception, abusing someone's power or abusing the vulnerability of the victim, or even giving and receiving payments to gain control of a victim for the purpose of exploiting them for forced labor or slavery or similar practices or involuntary servitude. So it's a legal definition in the case of trafficking as opposed to a broader term in the case of labor exploitation. So thinking of it along the lines of like subsets, you can see that labor exploitation would be the most broad aspect of things. Labor violations, which would be those things that are established and coded in law. So we have a minimum wage act, we have different orders that govern how workers should be treated and so forth. So that would be under labor violations. So not every labor violation is going to be not every labor exploitation rather is going to be a labor violation, but the converse is true. And then within that subset, you still have human trafficking, where the act and the means are established for the purpose of exploiting someone else's labor. So those are like the three areas that we can look at and easily understand the definition. I understand that you also have a video that you wanted to play that will also give some clarity to that.
Yes. Well, Shortman, first let's go to video, to the first one in the promo block, International Men's Day, right? And then from there you go to video A. So let's go to number one first, Shortman. And if you're just joining us, you're listening to Dependency, and we are speaking with Mr. Adrian Alexander, who is the president of the Free the Slaves Foundation here in Trinidad and Tobago. And also he representing this morning on behalf of the Gender Affairs and the Ministry of
Gender and Child Affairs Division. Under the Office of the Prime Minister.
Under the Office of the Prime Minister. So let's go to that first one.
International Men's Day celebrates the love and protection men provide for their families and communities. Sadly, globally every year, 452,000 men commit suicide. The International Men's Day theme for 2023 is Zero Male Suicide. Almost twice as many men kill themselves compared to women. On average, in Western countries, for every one woman who commits suicide, tragically, 3 to 4 men take their own lives. Professor Dan Bilsker states that we're in the middle of a silent epidemic of male suicide. Dr. Rob Whitley says new male-friendly suicide prevention measures must be adopted to help halt the crisis. One suicide is one too many. Together we can work towards zero male suicide. Let's all work together to support men. Wish every man you meet a happy International Men's Day on November 19.
All right, so we want to go to video A now, Shortman, which is going to explain a little bit more about labor exploitation. And
it's really sad to we as men, and I'm testament to that, that my journey reaching to where I am today. A lot of people really don't understand that, people who are in positions to really help men, I've met them who decided they're not going to help. And I must admit, folks, I've never discussed this with Natasha many times because I didn't want her to be scared. But there are times, and Natasha and I have been at each other's side for the last 26-something years. But I have thought, because I grew up in a house where my mother insisted that the man has to be the provider. You must provide for your family. And that was before women started working.
Yeah.
But
a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it was, and I grew up with that. So when I couldn't achieve, and I go there and meeting people who insist that they don't want to help me achieve, I went back home depressed almost every single day. And I thought about suicide many times. But I just felt that that's not the way to go, and I should fight it. And the military training that helped me to do that. But it wasn't easy. It was not easy. Trust me. And we don't, because in society, men are deemed to be the stronger sex, and you shouldn't cry. And I remember talking here some years ago on the radio station, and people right here come back and you're bulletin, you're feeling sorry for yourself, you're feeling sorry for yourself. And that reason I stopped talking, That's one of the reasons I stopped crying out, because people would come after me and say, yeah, you're feeling sorry for yourself, and I saying, wow. And I'm, as a man saying that,
Yes, exactly.
That's the irony. Not women
realizing
saying
that men have emotions just as women do, and men have a right to be vulnerable and to express that in however they see fit.
Yeah. They felt I was feeling sorry for myself. So that way now I say, look, I can't cry on radio because,
men have
I'm
emotions
feeling sorry for myself.
Outside of anger, people. Come on.
Let's go to the video. Video A. Lord knows, yes. Lord knows I am.
Did you know that some workers are not paid for the work they do? Some workers are made to work in unsafe or abusive conditions. If you are undocumented, standing up to your employer or seeking help can result in deportation, separation from family, being torn away from your life. This means undocumented workers can be exploited and abused without consequences. When we ignore this situation, we all lose. Labor standards are not enforced. Victims are silenced. Employers that pay fair wages are unable to compete. And as consumers, we are offered goods and services that involve exploitation. Labor inspectors are supposed to enforce working conditions and protect workers. But in many countries, they are also required to enforce immigration rules or do inspections together with police or migration enforcement officers. When workers are afraid to come forward, labor inspectors cannot tackle abusive working conditions. One undocumented worker can always be replaced by another. The cycle of exploitation continues. It is possible to put fairness and justice before migration status. What if labour inspectors could be more effective in enforcing labour standards for all? By establishing a firewall, labour inspectors would not report on migration status and would protect confidentiality. A firewall benefits everyone. We're all better off when every worker can file a complaint without fear. Complaints are properly investigated. There are appropriate consequences for exploitation, and workers can receive their due wages and stand up for themselves. Some labour authorities are taking steps to help workers file a complaint safely and recuperate unpaid wages, regardless of migration status. For more information about effective complaints mechanisms, visit pecom.org.
Right, Adrian?
Yes, sir. Thanks so much for sharing those videos. And even for what you shared earlier, God, I think a lot of men needed to hear that from a man's man like yourself, that there are times when you don't feel like you're on top of the world, and when you've been turned down, especially for employment, to be able to fulfill what you believe is one of your core functions as a man, to provide for yourself and your family, so that you're not like a leech on anybody, and you can stand up with your head proud. It's hard. It's really difficult. So knowing that you face that, knowing that you were able to overcome that by reminding yourself that, hey, tomorrow will be the breakthrough. Or yeah, the next person I speak with, that person may be the one to give me the opportunity, so that we don't lose hope, right? And male mental health is something that a lot of men don't want to talk about. Anything that men have to do, and even in terms of our physical health, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to go to the doctors and sort that out. And it's those types of delays that lead to a culmination of so many issues. And I think that same type of attitude is also seen in this whole realm of labor exploitation and labor trafficking. Even the global research focuses more, and of course the media accounts focus so much more on sex trafficking than labor trafficking. And globally, we know that sex trafficking primarily involves the victimization of women and girls. But even over the last 5-year period, when we look at the Global Trafficking in Persons report from the UNODC, there was a 10% rise in the exploitation of boys for sex trafficking. But primarily men, not only, but primarily men are exploited for their labor in so many things. And let's just look back at our own Caribbean history, right? We had so many African slaves or African heroes who were enslaved, brought across the Atlantic and forced into labor for primarily a labor-intensive industry of agriculture. Women were also enslaved, but the primary function was for labor, for in the home, reproduction, and so forth. So men were the primary victims then. And even in Trinidad and Tobago's own experience back in 2013, just after the proclamation of the Trafficking in Persons legislation, there were about 2 or 3 fishing boats of primarily Indonesian men who drifted into our waters. They had no fuel, no food, no water. And it's because, for the most part, they were victims of labor exploitation and, in some instances, of labor trafficking. All right? They were recruited. Their first salary would have been taken by the recruiters. The money to be sent to them to buy fuel, food, and water dried up because the company that was behind this ruse closed down. Okay? And they ended up from Indonesia here in Trinidad and Tobago. So that's to tell you how long they would have been in that situation of exploitation. Even in other types of circumstances where maybe on land, men may not want to complain. They don't want to lose their opportunity to earn. Migrants, as you mentioned, God, they may have a commitment to remit funds back home to support their families. And regardless of what is taking place, how much they are exploited, many of them prefer to suck it up, to bear with that, to make that sacrifice for the sake of those that they love. So they will not self-disclose that they are victims of any form of exploitation simply because they don't want to lose the opportunity to earn. So, in a situation where there's physical abuse, psychological abuse taking place to keep that person in that place of exploitation, it means that the man, because he's identified far seldom than women and girls or children in that same type of situation, he has to endure it even longer. So you're talking about the physical harm to his body, the fractures, the breaks, because many of these job type, let's say, circumstances that don't respect the safety and health regulations, right? So you may be faced with injuries, you may be faced with chemical exposure, harmful, toxic chemicals that even may, Garth, impede your manhood, right? So that adds insult to the injury. Then you have various circumstances where you are no longer able to work. You may be injured and you are denied medical treatment, all right? Because, of course, nobody wants to spend money on a doctor to keep you alive because we could always replace you. So the culmination of abuse, the culmination of neglect of rights will have a greater effect on a lot of men. So men and women have been diagnosed with PTSD coming out of various types of trafficking situations, labor as well as sex trafficking. So I think it's important for us to appreciate that when we're talking about labor exploitation, when we're talking about forced labor, when we're talking about labor trafficking and its effect on men, it is just as damaging on our men and boys as it is on our women and girls who may also be exposed to similar situations or may be exposed to sex trafficking. God?
Yes, you're correct. You're so correct. And as you know, this conversation this morning has been unearthing in me so many things. And as you speak, I see the faces that who I've encountered in the past to get here, and thank God I understood it, so that when I went back home, I didn't take it out on Natasha, I didn't take it out on my family, but it speaks to some of the violent situations we see in households today, where a man, especially those who coming out of prison, coming out of rehab, lost their job, and they're going out there looking, as we say on the street, looking for it, but coming back home empty-handed. And people don't understand that when you deny a man the opportunity to earn a living or make a bread, you deny his family too as well. And that emasculates him. And I don't think
it also pushes him into a corner. So a lot of men, because we're talking about the crime situation earlier, right? So a lot of men who may not have been living a life of crime before, with COVID, with job losses and so forth, they feel desperate, right? And it's easier for them because of that desperation. You go home and you hear your child crying, the lady making noise, right? Say, oh gosh, you can't do nothing, look at fella there. All kind of noise going on in the house. So as you mentioned, yes, you could end up in situations of domestic abuse, but you can also end up saying, hey, you push a man on the corner, or that fella looking to go and break in someplace and you want somebody to go with him, right? And out of desperation, you may make an imprudent choice and get yourself chained up in some sort of crime. But even so, when you're thinking about the definition in our legislation of exploitation, exploitation includes things such as transporting or being in possession of illegal items, whether you're transporting it across a border or within the country. So when I think of young, impoverished people in this country, who are the ones who are paraded before the courts for being in possession of certain things, which didn't fall from the sky. Somebody recruited them in labor trafficking to take this item or those drugs to that place and to sell it for them. All of those things form part of the labor exploitation and the trafficking that we're speaking about. So having a public health lens is something that I welcome. When I heard about the heads of government meeting earlier this year, I think it was in April, and that discussion as to whether or not to use a public health lens on crime and violence in the Caribbean, my heart was filled with joy and hope, because I trust that by saying with crime and violence, we're using this lens, that we will also do it for trafficking in persons. Because where those strategies have been utilized, Garth and Natasha, they've seen tremendous success in identifying the root cause of the issue. And you're able then to help extract people who are more vulnerable so that they don't become victims and they don't become perpetrators. And therefore, you have a much safer society.
As you mentioned, vulnerability and victims, we don't often associate those terms with men. I think that is the crucial bit that is missing in our conversations about this. And if men themselves do not acknowledge their vulnerabilities, how can they then be helped? What is the solution here in terms of the labor trafficking?
Yeah, we can assume that people are vulnerable. As you rightly said earlier, men have emotions. Men are vulnerable, and people are vulnerable in different situations. So I may not be inherently vulnerable, or I may, but in a particular circumstance, my vulnerability may be exacerbated. All right. So in the case of labor trafficking, where you are subject to physical or psychological oppression, where your family's safety is being threatened unless you work, even if you think that you can throw a few fists at somebody in front of you, you're thinking that their allies may hurt your family who is far away. All right. So that immediately causes you to be constrained. So I think if we see someone in a situation of exploitation, I think that's the starting point. This is a situation of exploitation. Let's do the inquiries, make the inquiries, and see how we can work back to find out first and foremost if this person has been trafficked, because we have certain ingredients for that offense that we can look at. If this person's rights are being violated in the form of labor violations, and again, we have the law that we can look at, and they look at the circumstances to see if that is what is taking place. So even if they do not self-disclose, we can step in and provide the prosecution against the perpetrators, and we need to provide the support services for those individuals globally, and even here in Trinidad and Tobago, but I'm telling you globally, support services for men who are victims of human trafficking, be it labor or sex trafficking, are precious few and far between, even in the United States. Facilities and support services for men is just not a priority. And that's extremely unfortunate. And again, it may have to do with that perception that, men can handle their stories and men don't really talk about. No, but if you create a safe space for men, we will speak. If you have an environment where we feel that there's confidentiality, that we're not going to be ridiculed for sharing something that is deep and personal, we will open up, right? And I think it's the lack of those environments that is a serious contributor to men feeling hopeless and helpless, and unfortunately dying by suicide. But it's also a challenge where men don't know we have our networks. Natasha, you mentioned earlier, women have some very, very strong networks.
Yep.
Men have powerful networks. We sit down, we line, we all talk, we watch sports, we play sports. But when it comes to disclosing things like, well, I don't know about this. Do you know and you can help me? There's a sense of shame because we have unfortunately stigmatized our men into, well, if you lack in any area, you are deficient as a man, right?
Yep.
And that's extremely unfortunate. Men should be able to access support services such as how to find out if a business is legitimate, how to find out if they've committed any labor violations or if there are any reports against them for any form of labor exploitation. How can we then identify where support services are if I'm feeling depressed? And if I walk into a particular environment, even a police station, right, and I say I need help, someone is not going to laugh at me and say, and your name, man, and make you feel that you're lower than the white line on the highway. So we need to create the environments. We need to help men build the support systems, and they include women. One of the main supporters of International Men's Day for years was a woman by the name of Diana Sayers, right? And she lives in the US. She was perhaps like the secretariat for International Men's Day North America for a number of years. and she provided tremendous support services. And I think that synergy is what we need. We can't stand at polar opposites and assume that women, you have to get everything together for yourselves, and men, you have to get everything together for yourselves. No, we are human beings first, and we form families. So to try to maintain that sort of status quo is damaging to everyone. So everyone is, as opposed to everyone having the opportunity to win. Yes, God.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to Dependency, and the voice you're hearing is that of Adrian Alexander, president of Free the Slaves Foundation here in Trinidad and Tobago. And it's those of you, our loyal followers, especially on YouTube, we thank you very much for joining us. And remember to like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And under the auspices of the Gender
and Child Affairs Division.
Gender and Child Affairs Division. And we're hosting this program this morning, and in the second hour, you hear from the Minister of National Security.
Before you go, Garth, I just wanted Adrian to expand a little bit about when he spoke about the spaces and the environment for men where men can access resources, services, help. What does that look like? Is there anything currently in our society or elsewhere where that kind of approach works?
I think we've seen that over the years, Natasha, through men-initiated forums, right? You may know of Mr. Joseph Small, the New Millennium Knights, a group of fantastic men and women. They're bikers. They come from all different sectors of the society. And they started a men's forum a number of years ago, where basically men come, no professionals really there, but men who have been through stuff, helping other men through life. A powerful, powerful medium. Women are invited to attend, but they have to take a vow not to interrupt the men. And at the end, then they can share what they've gleaned. And I think that creates a safe space. It creates an opportunity for male mentoring of other men. And one instance I remember Mr. Small sharing with me of a man who was brought there. And he said afterwards, this has saved my life because I was planning to commit self-harm. And it was about not having a job, losing his girlfriend, his partner, not being able to access his children, and all of those things culminating in him feeling hopeless and helpless and deciding on that day that he was going to take his own life, right? So coming into that space, he was able to ask questions. He was able to hear men who had been there, just as God was so open and vulnerable for all of us to hear. And he was able to learn from them that there is hope. You can hold on. And people would then be able to connect him to other people who could even give him a job, right? So when men are able to open up, these things happen. There's also Men Can, an initiative of Python Solutions, that's Kwasi Kujo, doing excellent work with men and boys in the country. They've done some things in the prison system as well. So those are just two examples. And I think with Men Can, a lot of other men's groups have come together. Many people would know, of course, of Single Fathers Association, and I believe the gentlemen in that organization are at the Grenada conference that I mentioned earlier. So they're taking it outside of Trinidad and Tobago. So there are lots of areas where men can get help. I think it's important for men to hear and to know that you can take the initiative, because these are spaces where men will not laugh at you for coming to help, because they are there for that particular purpose, to give you the support, to give you the encouragement, to help you to network so that you can prosper and that you can fulfill your life's purpose.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, sharing that information. I'm sure and I hope our audience was listening keenly, because I really do feel that where these spaces exist, everybody should know about it. And Garth, what do you think about that? About those, I wouldn't say men only, but spaces where men can feel comfortable to to open up, to be honest and open about how they feel and their emotions, as I would say again, and where they can access, information that they don't have in a space where that doesn't condemn you for not knowing.
On my journey, I have realized that you seek out men to speak with, but there's no result coming out of it. You're just telling somebody your business, really.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. You will seek out a minister, you will seek out a counselor, you will seek out, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
But at the end of it all, what you really need is an answer to how you get to sort your family out.
Yeah.
And you're not getting that. So you will just be telling 10 people and you're still going back home depressed.
Yes. And men can gossip just as well as women. Eh?
Yeah, and because you'll call somebody.
Facts.
It's serious. You'll call somebody and say, hey, listen, because I seen my wife already going and struggle 2 weeks before month end. So I call her partner and say, hey, listen, I really need your help, so and so is the case, and and then he said, nah, but I can't help you now. And then call somebody and say, guess who just called me? Yeah, like he started back using cocaine, boy. And that is what you will get. Yeah. So as a result of that, you clam up,
Yeah.
And
you want to tell nobody nothing.
And sometimes people don't what people understand about misdirected anger. And I remember when we had Missy.
Yes.
Every time
a cat.
Yes, that's
male cat.
A male cat. And every time I go out to now, keeping in mind, I never applied for a food card, never applied for public assistance, because I felt there are people who less, who more needy than I am to apply for that and leave that for them. However, I wanted to go out there in my field and get work. And every time I come home, Missy would greet me by the door, begging for snacks. Every time. That was Missy's routine. And there was a time I bawled at Missy because I had just had an encounter with an official that really had me down. And I bawled at Missy. Natasha wasn't home. And Missy ran outside. And after I sat back and I said, wait, now God, this is not Missy's fault, This Missy don't know what's going on out there. And I come home, and this is how some men go home and take it out on their families.
Yes.
Because they feel emasculated outside of the home. And if you have a wife who doesn't understand that, will further emasculate you by saying, don't raise your voice here, You ain't bringing no money here. Me tell you go to jail. Me tell you lost your work, And deep down inside of me as a man, I want to provide for my family. But there are obstacles in doing that for some people. And that is the downside of it. It's just that I was stubborn.
God, as you mentioned that word provide again, I feel like there is an opportunity here for us to expand on the ways that men can provide for their families and their communities. It doesn't always have to be money. You can help out with childcare, transporting your children to school and to their activities, cleaning the house, cooking. They are providing does not just mean bringing in an income. As important as that is, there are other ways that men can contribute to the household and to the family. I feel like that needed to be interjected in there. But I understand your point.
No, but you see how I operate too as well at home.
Yes.
Because of the work that you do, I would cook, I would clean, I would do everything.
Witness.
To offset the so Natasha.
This is true.
Adrian?
That's awesome.
Yes.
No, because when Natasha was working, I would make sure and cook for her so she could carry food to work.
Mm-hmm.
I would not let her come home after work to go and cook to prepare to go to work the next day. I could do that. I could get up. I could clean the house from bow to stern.
And that is a valuable contribution to the household. And I think a lot of men don't realize this. They're stuck in this mold where you have to be man and provide people with money and hand people money in their hand, and that is how you are valued. That is your worth. And I think men should realize that they are more than that.
Now, Shortman, let's go to video C quickly as the Minister of National Security has joined us here. Because Araceli was asking, as a language interpreter, I've seen, I'm not reading this, labor exploitation. Where can I point an affected to safely report to safely report the abuse?
Yes.
So this is
this is the video for you.
This is the video for you, Araceli. Go ahead, Shortman.
Video C.
This is from the Ministry of Labor. And if you're just joining us, you're listening to...
Hola Carlos, ¿cómo estás?
Oye María, estoy bien, pero tengo un problema.
¿Qué pasa?
Estoy trabajando y hace más de un mes que no me pagan.
Oh, no, eso es terrible. Tienes que presentar una denuncia. Puedes ir a la División de Asesoramiento y Defensa de la Conciliación, en el Ministerio del Trabajo.
Pero yo no soy trinitario, ¿y si me meten en la cárcel?
No, eso no pasará. No importa si estás legal o ilegal, el Ministerio del Trabajo atenderá tu queja sin que seas detenido. Allí pueden ayudarte a resolver ese problema.
¿Cómo me acerco a ellos?
Tienes que ir al Ministerio de Trabajo aquí, en Puerto España, o cualquiera de las oficinas del Ministerio de Trabajo en Trinidad y Tobago.
Vaya, muchas gracias. Me alegro de que haya algún lugar al que pueda acudir en busca de ayuda.
Right, so that message from the Ministry of Labor, in Spanish, of course, for those Spanish-speaking residents we have here in Trinidad and Tobago. I hope Araceli caught that and can benefit from that information, because the Labor Inspectorate at the Ministry that's their job, to protect the rights of workers, regardless of whether they're citizens or migrants.
That's correct. I see ministers in studio, so let me just take this in for a landing. Happy International Men's Day to you, sir.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Alexander. And let me take the opportunity to extend same to you and all of those who are paying attention to this program this morning, and to wish you continued progress and hard work as you've been doing for many years in our country. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Minister. All right, so Garth, Natasha, thanks so much for having me. As you indicated, this is actually an initiative of the Gender and Child Affairs Division of the Office of the Prime Minister, observing International Men's Day, focusing on labor exploitation that primarily affects our men in this country. And as Natasha said, they can be men who are migrants as well as citizens and nationals of our country. Your labor rights will be protected under the law. So we encourage people to really become aware of what your rights are, because lack of awareness of your rights, lack of awareness of risks of accepting certain types of dubious job offers are two of the ways that people actually fall into various forms of labor exploitation. Ask questions, get in touch with Ion Dependency, some of the resources that you've heard play over the air. They can share those with you, they can share numbers so that you can get in touch with the Labor Inspector Unit. So don't be afraid to reach out. The offices of the Labor Inspector Unit, the Counter Trafficking Unit, if you believe that this is a situation of human trafficking or labor trafficking that you're witnessing or that you are a victim of, you can make those calls. The CTU's number has been published over and over again on this program, but just in case you don't have it saved on your phone, it's 800-4288. That's 800-4288. And reach out. I just want to thank you again, Garth, as I leave, for being transparent to share how your own journey in seeking employment and the hurdles that you faced led you to experience depression, feeling hopeless, feeling helpless. Because a lot of men are going through that even right now in our society. A lot of young men, they're leaving school and they may have the opportunity to go to CCC or one of our other paramilitary type of institutions or services, but a lot of them, even when they leave there are very few prospects for employment. And it is persons in that type of situation who may be targeted by recruiters for labor trafficking, recruiters of gangs for them to get involved. And as we shared earlier, some of the gang-related activity is actually covered in the Trafficking in Persons Act as labor trafficking. So let's do our part to ensure that we create safety nets for our men and boys in our society. And that, as Natasha said, can be very, very broad. Let's not think along the lines of what used to be. Let's ensure that our men and boys appreciate that they have value inherently. And that value can be fleshed out by how they better engage with their partners. Instead of being abusive, be supportive, all right? Understand that any gender can play the role of caregiver. Any gender can cook and clean. Let's disabuse ourselves of all of these old myths that it's a woman's job to do this, a woman's job to do that. Let us as men step up and be that support for and in our families. So I want to thank you again. I know this has been a little intrusion into Minister's time, so I will excuse myself at this point, and really wish all of you, our male listeners, a wonderful International Men's Day. Garth, Natasha.
Thank you very much, Adrian. As usual, very articulate, eloquent, and educating. Thank you so much, and we'll keep in touch with you.
Okay, one last thing. I know you had mentioned the organization Free the Slaves. So if persons wanted to get some more information, they can visit the website, freetheslaves.net. That's all one word, freetheslaves.net, and /Trinbago. Right? So freetheslaves.net /Trinbago. And you can get some information as to some of the work that we're doing here and in the region, and some contact information as well.
All right.
So,
absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And as we just go a quick break, short man, you'll play in the promo block number 5 and number 7 and come back with the tag. So you're playing 5 and 7, come back with the tag, and we speak with Minister of National Security. Those of you just joining us, he's in studio with us and update you on matters of national security. Remember that there's a memorandum of understanding between the Ministry of National Security, Ministry of Labour, and the Counter-Trafficking Unit as well.
Yes.
And I'm sure the Minister will elaborate on that when we return. You're listening to Dependency. Stay right there. We'll be back.
International Men's Day celebrates the love and protection men provide for their families and communities. Sadly, globally every year, 452,000 men commit suicide. The International Men's Day theme for 2023 is Zero Male Suicide. Almost twice as many men kill themselves compared to women. On average, in Western countries, for every one woman who commits suicide, tragically, 3 to 4 men take their own lives. Professor Dan Bilsker states that we're in the middle of a silent epidemic of male suicide. Dr. Rob Whitley says new male-friendly suicide prevention measures must be adopted to help halt the crisis. One suicide is one too many. Together we can work towards zero male suicide. Let's all work together to support men. Wish every man you meet a happy International Men's Day on November 19.
The government of Trinidad and Tobago, through the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons, continues to develop and implement effective policies and procedures to prevent and suppress human trafficking. To date, the National Task Force has developed 2 national plans of action against the crime of trafficking in persons. Trinidad and Tobago adopts a 4-pronged approach in its response to human trafficking. 1. Effective identification of victims and witnesses. 2. Prevention of human trafficking. 3. Protection of victims and witnesses. And 4. prosecution of suspected traffickers. In the Ministry of National Security, we established a specialized unit called the Counter-Trafficking Unit to lead and manage Trinidad and Tobago's response to human trafficking. The Counter-Trafficking Unit works closely with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Immigration Division, and international law enforcement agencies to aggressively and proactively investigate and prosecute suspected human traffickers. Human trafficking is a serious crime. Rest assured, the government of Trinidad and Tobago and its agencies remain committed in the fight against human trafficking and will respond with immediate effect when the need arises.
We are the Counter-Trafficking Unit of the Ministry of National Security, Trinidad and Tobago, safeguarding human life.
Eye on Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Reality radio, at its best, where every life is a biography.
Sundays at 10 a.m. and exclusively on 95.5 FM.
And streamed live on the Eye on Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel.
She was under pressure when Tommy was breadwinner. He used to go about boasting how hard he had she working. One day, table stood, he lost his work and ended up home. Now she took breadwinner and he became homemaker. Man, she have him working the way he was doing each day as a rule. She had Tommy walking like a mule. You mop me house, yes darling. You dust me couch, yes darling. You make me bed, yes darling. You change my spread, yes darling. Oh, you wash the wares, yes darling.
Thank you for staying with us. This is Eye on Dependency, and we are live in studio with the Honorable Fitzgerald Hines, Minister of National Security, and we were just
who will explain
the song. And I want to say thanks again to Adrian Alexander of Free the Slaves and the Gender and Child Affairs Division. But Minister, yes, please explain why you.
Before you do that, those of you having problems on Facebook, go to our YouTube channel. That's Eye on Dependency on YouTube. That it's more efficient and the signal don't drop as often as Facebook. All right, yep. Minister, could you explain to the public why we were laughing? We were discussing this track over the air.
Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning to you, sir. Good morning, and Natasha, and Gary, and all of your listeners. Thanks to Mr. Alexander as well. While you were speaking with him, you did say, by way of personal and very outstanding and good example, that in response to Natasha's suggestion that the contribution that the man makes to the home need not only be or always be financial. His work and his contribution around the home, as indeed women have for thousands of years, is very significant. And of course, you went on by way of personal example to say, well, you do it. You stay and you cook, you prepare lunch for your wife to take to work and all that, which I think is admirable and commendable. And then I remembered my good friend Tambu, a very professional and, and astute, international performer in his day before his Christian sojourn. Or experience. Tambu sang this song, which I thoroughly enjoyed. But of course, when you listen to the lyrics in Tambu's song, I don't think he is simply demeaning Tommy. I think he was saying, while Tommy wife have him doing that, Tommy wife gone out and roam. So I think that was his problem with the song. And but you don't behave like that, Natasha.
No, certainly not.
You stay home and you support your husband in all of this.
In everything.
And therefore, Tambu's song stands as a classical piece of entertainment and social commentary. It is unchallenged even now, because I think he was dealing with the behavior of Tommy's wife.
Yes.
So the song has its significance, and it is not to condemn men for being the kind of contributors as you have recommended it. That was the reason why I didn't call for the song. I remembered it.
Minister, thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much.
What's happening? Tell us on this day on International Men's Day, the Ministry of National Security and all other agencies.
Well, as we have established here before, to deal with national security generally is to deal with human behavior. And of course, in this world, men, by virtue of our presence, traditionally, and will always, I suspect, be called upon to play a very significant role and contribute as men to the development of ourselves, our communities, our families, most of all, and to contribute to the development of the country. As we were saying during the break, one of the big problems that countries, including Trinidad and Tobago, would face is the question of contribution, question of work, the question of output, the question of doing and building and nurturing. And from all of the anecdotal observations and even some surveys that have been done, it appears it's easy to see if you went to the average parent-teachers association meeting. You would see a cadre of women and a handful of men. And that handful only came within the last few years. Prior to that, there would be no men because somewhere along the line we didn't play a role in that. Now I can say like that, when it comes to my own experience, I played a very pivotal role in the development of my children. In terms of getting them ready for SE and so on. I took personal responsibility for that, and notwithstanding that I was a member of parliament, they will tell you I took time and was their personal tutor all the way up until those exams. And I would have learned that from my father. He was a third standard educated man. He wasn't able to teach me the stuff, but he insisted that I had the books, and I can't get it out of my head. He provided every single thing the school or the cadet force at camp or otherwise requested. He was painstaking in that. Once I bring that list, he ensured that. So I had never been short on a pencil. And these things you just learn. And I'm like that, and I'm hoping that, I've told my sons a million times about that, and I'm hoping that they would be like that, so that he will continue to live as he lives in me, to live in them, and they will pass it on, and it will become a feature.
But that's the most powerful lesson, when you see these things done by example, when your parents show you by way of doing.
And he used to say, he said, man. He used to say that. He used to emphasize the importance of man and the role. But, in those days, we thought man was purely and only provider and that sort of stuff. So we celebrate men. But it is a fact that men and women will tell you that right here in Trinidad and Tobago, we seem to be disappearing. We can't be found. And I think we are losing our place. And I think women have lost a lot of trust and confidence and respect for and in us. So there's no question about it. As we celebrate International Women's Day, clearly we have some rebuilding and some stuff to do. We have some work to do. We have some work to do, some reflection, but it is a very tough thing, as Garth was pointing out. In this material world, when you can't come up to the expectation materially, it really does have a serious impact on your psychology and your head. And sometimes the women are quick to make you to understand that too. Not just the women, the society, because remember, advertisements running every day, and advertisements are intended to influence your thoughts and therefore your spending behavior. So when the advertisement is put, it affects those who have income and those who don't have, It affects those who have legitimate income and those who have ill-gotten gain too, But the whole economy, the whole political structure The system is designed to get you up on this roller coaster. Now, the next important thing is to contain yourself, to be contented and to make use of what you have.
Yes.
I read this morning an ex-inmate. He served 14 years. I think his name is something Innis. He's on today's paper. He served 14 years, and he spent 14 years in there and then won the case. And Innis was making the point of the adjustment he had to make when he came back out on Civil Street.
Yes.
And one of the issues is he has learned to be patient. And to understand you have to work with what you have. There are young men, there are people who feel because I don't have, and them have, and we don't have, it is their right to go and take from somebody else now, offending God's law, because that's not the way God intended it.
Yep.
Even the birds and the ants and the pigeons, they work. This morning I heard the pigeons working for me and for the world. Gawking going across there, making us excited and happy. The flowers work, they beautify the place. The trees work, they clean the atmosphere from the carbon dioxide and monoxide.
Yes.
Yeah. So God created a system where everything contributes something. So if God gave you 16 ounces of gray matter, a heart, lungs, hands, feet, nationality in Trinidad and Tobago, God made you a man, he could have made you a pit bull. He could have made you a snail. But he made you the highest of all of his creations, a man. Now, I don't celebrate too much this day and that day and the other day and so on, because I think it's every day. I think the year is broken down into 365 degrees, meaning days. And I think every single day is equally important. That's why I don't celebrate my birthday, because I might feel my birthday is special. But I don't think it is. Because if my birthday on the 3rd of December,
Tell us what date it is.
for it to come,
Had to be
the
special.
second have to come first.
Yes.
So if mine, so I think the second more important than the third.
No, man.
Yeah, everyone is important. Because if the second don't come, the third ain't reaching.
I remember because my birthday is 3rd of October.
I remember.
Lord, Father.
So as a result of that and other considerations, I don't too much pay attention to my birthday, and I don't give myself the trouble of having to celebrate nothing and impose no condition on my family to find no gift and find no fineries. I did no business with that.
Right.
I feel every day God gave me life. I thank God for life, and I do the business today. But Innes was making the point that he learned to be patient, which I really admired. So he's working for a small income, and he knows that that small income wouldn't give him everything he wants now, but he saves a little bit, and he's planning for a better day. Now, you see that?
Now, where he did learn that patience? In prison?
I think his experience in the prison taught him that.
Right.
And prison, the restriction of the human body behind prison walls allows you to develop the mind and your thought processes and so on, because when the body is restricted, the mind has to become a little more fluent to balance your existence. And I think he was balanced, and I really enjoyed reading Brother Innes this morning, wherever he is. May he too have strength. And then the need for us as a society to be compassionate, because you made the point this morning, you want help. You come for help, and we all need help. All through my life, I needed help. And you go for help, and then somebody is scathing in their criticism of you, showing a lack of compassion.
Yeah.
Now, of course, when you're in public life like me, or when you live in Trinidad, where we have perhaps more smart men and smart women per square foot than any other country in the world, because we have good smart men and smart women here, let's be real.
Yes,
you now have to discern whether it's a real thing, because, pipers and drug dealers and drug pushers and not pushers, users, as you will know, God, they are some of the most ingenious beings you will find.
Yeah.
They can come up with all kinds of things.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
One time, you know, a fella came to me and gave me I'm very watchful. He gave me a proper story. And I'm in doubt, First time I'm seeing him. But I decided I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. So I went into my wallet and I parted with twice as much as he asked for. And the whole thing in me tell me, make a block. And when I make the block, I see him heading straight by the pusher, man. That was before my time in public life, so I want to make that very clear.
Yes.
Because, you know, the next thing, the city minister. So I went now, and I saw him coming down the track then, and I waited for him, and of course I accosted him and demanded my thing back because I realized he was just going to
buy
burn
drugs.
it.
Right.
And I told him, among other things, I took it back. I'm telling you the truth. I said, give it to me. Turn a little bit and twist, but I demanded it and I get it back. And I tell him, I say, you know, what you need is not this, you know, you need to be cleansed, you need some help. And I started to direct him to where he could go and get help. But so at all stages, those who are approached have to make a judgment call too, You understand?
Yes, yes.
So sometimes even you have to be compassionate to understand their frailty and their weakness too. This whole thing is a very complex thing that requires total.
And we were discussing that earlier in terms of how men find the spaces and the individuals that will listen, that will direct them to where they can get help, and who will not take the business and run with it and tell the marish and parish. And we were saying how important having those spaces is
but I want to say
for
this.
men especially.
I want to say this at the end of the day, and this is real. At the end of the day, regardless of whether we believe it or not, I believe, and in fact, I think I know, God is the greatest. God live. And, you know, light attracts light. And if the brother is sincere about finding himself and the right pathways, regardless of the tribulation, he will find it. As a matter of fact, the tribulation will only propel him and make him stronger. And regardless, he is going to find his level. He will find it. It is so Jah say. So the whole thing to me, at the end of the day, is a spiritual journey. It is that. So even if he encounters difficulty, even if he encounters unbelievers, even if he encounters some bashing, once, you know, and this is where prayer is so critical. Listen, it really is a leap of faith, but I have seen how prayer works. I'm sure we all have seen.
I'm a living testament to that, Minister.
Yeah. So whatever the crisis is, whatever the struggle is, you have to still find it within yourself to give God thanks and praise for life, for hope. And you have to be humble enough to understand not everybody will understand your position. And not everybody will make your path easier. But you got to keep on praying and keep on moving.
No, Minister, if you don't mind, you have some, and I would like, for this context, I have used children under your watch. And for the past 2 weeks, we have seen up to 14 police officers heading to the courts. What would you say to your police officers this morning who are listening to you about the, you know, on International Men's Day especially? You know, what would you say to them? Because a couple of them messaging me and, you know, to ask the minister this and that, but let's talk about that. Men in the police service.
Yeah, well, policing is a very, very tough business, especially in this time. When I was a police officer, life was tough, but it surely couldn't be as difficult as it is today, because things are becoming progressively volatile, progressively worse. New drugs, new crimes, new opportunities, new standards, new everything. I look at police officers sometimes in the course of my work as minister, and I really do feel a deep, deep empathy and sympathy, because when these young men, 18 and 20, leave their homes and come and join these organizations, sign up, A lot of them might be considering this is a job. When I went in, it was just for a job.
Yeah.
But then the reality of that job comes to you, sometimes immediately, sometimes not so swiftly, sometimes a particular kind of experience brings it home. And that happens. So it is a very tough business, policing. But at the end of the day, you are not a policeman, you know. Policing is what you do. I am not my job, you know. I am I. I was a policeman. I was an insurance salesman. I was a waiter in a restaurant. I was a cab driver. So all of those occupations change. I was 5, I was 10, I was 21, I was 31, I was 51, I was 61. All of those ages change. I was in St. Lucia yesterday. I came home last night. I was in Jamaica sometime before. I was in Miami. I am from Nigeria. I am from Cuba. I am from Trinidad. I am from Barbados. The places change. The thing that remains constant is I. So all the variables, where you are, what job you do, which house you live in, which car you drive, those are variables. But I and I and I is I. So the real issue is not the policeman, you know, it's the man. So I would say to them, you have to strengthen yourself. You have to know yourself. You have to come like the brother Innes this morning. You have to develop to the point where this material world don't pull you like no little idiot. And the advertisements don't get you going, and you don't have this envious thing because your neighbor have this. You want to have it too. Them roller coaster is exactly where the trip and the fall is. You have to know that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And if you want it, and if the Almighty God, whoever you see it to him or it to be, sanctions it, that is the faith, you can work diligently and you can get it without hurting anybody to get it or putting yourself in harm's way. So I feel sorry for the victims. I feel sorry for the people who can't contain themselves. That is why the book says it is better for a man to conquer himself than to capture a city. So the struggle is to contain yourself. Now that calls for some heights and some prayer and some consciousness and some discipline. But that is what the whole thing is about. This is a disciplined and ordered world. The moon don't come up at midday, you know. Everything is order. So you have to order yourself.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to Dependency, and we are having a chat on this International Men's Day with the Minister of National Security. And Minister, yes, go ahead.
And in addition to that, you also have to understand that you belong to an organization. So after you deal with yourself, you now also, on top of that, layered on it, is to understand that you belong to an organization. And the organization has a role and function and purpose, and there's an expectation of it. So when I was a civilian, there were things I would have done. But once I joined the police service and accepted that I was now a police officer, I decided I must abide by the organizational codes and standards. That is what my brain and my everything tells me I have to do. Similarly, if you get yourself a woman and she is your woman, she is the mother of your children, she is your wife, then you have to accept that and take on the responsibility of that. Yeah? And even as a Rasta man, before I was a Rasta man, there were certain things I would have done and certain ways I might have behaved. But once I took this order. It imposed certain order on me. And I live by that. And once I understand those things, so it's easy. So you belong to the police organization or the defense force, you operate under the colors, and you abide by it. You live to the standard, you contribute to it. You have to be in sync with it. A school of fish, large numbers. You see them in those Animal Planet and nature programs. You see them moving together, finding strength from each other in unison. If a shark pass and take one of them fin, and he start to wobble, different to the rest, well, among lions, the lions will take out that one, you know. You know that? Because he is now not moving with the crew. You follow? He's out of sync.
Yeah.
And he will attract predators. So you have to be in harmony with the thing. But overriding all of that is being in harmony with the universal principle of the truth.
Now, Minister,
and right.
Before you proceed, with whatever you would like to interject, but there's a side of you that people don't know about, right? And I think I will take this opportunity here on International Men's Day to ask about that. Now, you said you are a cab driver.
Yes.
Tell us about that, because I have an idea where, but I want you to tell us about it.
Yeah.
And what made you decide to do that?
Well, I went to England in 1987
right,
to pursue the study of law. And of course, I was not permitted to live the way I used to live. Before that, I had left the police service and I was selling insurance for some years. And I was the top salesman in my branch and I was doing very well materially. But once I decided to go to England, now that changed. So I went to England, my young wife and I at the time, and we got to having to live there. And quickly it became obvious that what resources we had, we couldn't sustain on that. So I had to find work. So I did find work. I was a waiter, as I told you, in a restaurant. And I mean, I graduated now from police, right? An insurance man in a suit driving Royal Saloon and living nice. Now see me in a little straw hat with a black band looking like a minstrel, in a red and white check shirt with a black bow tie. I mean, it's a trip.
Yeah, pictures.
I don't want none.
Actually reminded of that.
But
oh, Lord.
I found it necessary in order to take care of myself and my family. And the 3 children were born there too, right? So
look like a minstrel.
I'm dealing with me now. So here I am, every day I'm in a suit and going on in Trinidad, but my whole vibration now changed. So I am now in 2 jeans, 3 jumpers, and 1 leather coat. And that went on for 7 years. Serious, man. Because at the end of the day, you have to pay this weekly rent, and you have to achieve. Now, I told a friend of mine some time ago, if I had made that transformation of my social status in Trinidad and Tobago at UE, the same people who behaved the way they did when you came for help, they would have said, but like he gone mad. They was going to dog me. They would not have understood that it was, as the Bible says, 7 years of famine for 7 years of plenty. It's like 1 grain of wheat for 1 bale of barley. I had a vision and I was on the move. Anyway, along this development of me, my black consciousness came to the fore. It always was present, but now I'm in this strange land and I'm experiencing issues. So I am now further refining, and I started reading more and discovering myself. And then I decided I always loved Rasta. And now my luck started to come. This was in 1990 now. And I worked for 2 years before that in this restaurant as a waiter, was regarded as one of their best, their most polite and everything, especially with my beautiful Trinbagonian accent. So I am going down here now, When I show up now this summer for this work in this restaurant, the manager told me there are no vacancies. So I was in a kind of disbelief as to the authenticity of that. So I had a couple other Trinidadian friends who wanted to find work as well for the same reasons like me. So I sent 2 of them about 2 days later, and they got through. But there was no vacancy for me. I went back after that and inquired again. She told me no vacancy, and then I realized what the problem was. At which point, because of my success and hard work as an insurance salesman, we worked on commissions. So even while I was abroad, commissions continued to accrue in Trinidad in the account that I left here. This was one of the blessings too. So at this point, I decided I am going to become self-employed, because when one door is closed, many more will open. And if you have faith, yes, and you persevere, they will not be able to stop you. So at this point, I simply wrote home my bank manager and I told them I priced a car, and they sent the money for me from my account. And I purchased a gold-colored Vauxhall Cavalier. And I went to a cab firm and I registered as a cab driver now. My number was 09. And I now have my radio in the car and thing up so, antenna and so on. And that, Mr. Sinclair, was how I became a cab driver. I learned London. I went to Gatwick Airport from where I lived, Heathrow. I was all over London, man, doing business and earning my little tips and so on.
Right.
And so the story went by. I used to go to work with my school bag too. So I have it in the car. So once I sit down outside the cab office, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock, waiting for the next job, I get in the law inside of me. Job come, gone. And so it went. So, cab driver I was.
You had that ambition, and you stuck with it.
There's an old African saying, you can't block the sun with your fist.
Correct.
And Bob Marley said, it's a foolish dog that bark at a flying bird. So once you are in flight and you're going about your business, they could bark, they could talk, they could do what they want, them can't stop it.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to Dependency, and we have in studio with us Minister of National Security, the Honorable Fitzgerald Hines. Mr. Hines, we recently the government declared crime a national health crisis, and the ministry, and we know, have been working assiduously to come. And just like the Ministry of Health did for the COVID crisis, you are now doing for the Ministry of National Security.
Yes.
Take us through the steps, please.
In April of last year, the Honorable Prime Minister, I have not asked him, I don't know where he got it. Very often we don't question Dr. Rowley's inspiration, because he has proven to be truly inspired and a great leader. And over the years, I have learned to trust implicitly his political and other judgment. He came to me before April of last year, maybe about January, and told me he was considering, he wanted us to consider looking at violence and the crime problem we have as a public health issue. There was sufficient evidence, in terms of the lives we've been losing. Remember, he walked through COVID on a daily basis with Dr. Parasram and the Minister of Health and Day.
Yes.
So he came with this. And at the beginning, I didn't fully understand it, but I then started to research the topic for myself, and I began to get a better understanding of it. And in April of 2022, he convened a symposium, a 2-day symposium for the heads of CARICOM. And it was at that conference, in their final declaration, that the entire CARICOM accepted a new pathway, a new approach to dealing with the problems that we discovered in that symposium we all shared. I came from St. Lucia yesterday, and little St. Lucia with 180,000 people. are now at 74 murders for the year. The Minister of National Security in St. Lucia was expressing horror over that. And you will recall about 4 or 5 months ago, on one weekend, in one little village, somewhere in St. Lucia, 5 persons were gunned down. You can imagine the traumatic impact that would have. Yeah. So we all suffer the same issues. The guns are coming the same place. So we together have decided we will view violence and crime as a public health concern, similar to the way in which we saw, and because the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a public health concern, and therefore called on the world to respond to it. One of the things that was necessary was constant crisis management, because we were losing lives. Had COVID gotten out of hand in Trinidad and Tobago, as it did in other places, we would have lost many more than the 4,000 plus lives that we lost. So it had to be managed, and the Prime Minister took leadership of it, working along with the Minister of Health and our public health officials. And every day, for the better part of COVID-19, they communicated with the national community, telling us what the government was doing, what the international trends were, what was happening internationally, all through from the development of the vaccine and the provision of the vaccine, and how we had to join the COVAX system and purchase vaccines, and we had difficulty getting supplies because the big countries were hoarding them for their people in a world that don't need islands no more, according to David Rudder. And all of those issues, supporting businesses, supporting individuals, creating a parallel health system, but communication was critical. And in this crime crisis that we are having, where men, as we celebrate International Men's Day today, probably before the end of today, we would hear a few more murders, a few more brothers dead in our communities because of the paucity of mind and the ignorance and ego and folly and lack of respect for themselves and for life and for all the other things that lead to it. It is indeed obvious to us that this is a public health issue that requires across-the-board intervention. And therefore, I took the decision, and in a bill I presented recently in the Parliament, I announced that I intend to, in keeping with our national approach to COVID-19, I intend to communicate with the national community, which is why I'm here with you again today. We want at regular stages, in different ways, to communicate with the national community, telling them what we, the government, is doing in this crime crisis, to tell them what the police is doing, what law enforcement is doing, what role the Defense Force is playing, what role MILAT and CCC and our Youth Development Ministry, Mr. Foster Cummins and others are doing, what the Ministry of Social Development is doing, what the Ministry, the Office of the Prime Minister, Women, Child and Gender Affairs. Yesterday we had an outreach on the BSAM. That came because I saw a video, as I might have told you before, that went viral with 2 young ladies on the BSAM in a fight. Yeah. Both of them became semi-topless in the course of this, and it really offended me. I went in there, I told you about this.
Yes.
And as a result, I didn't just speak to the girls and their parents and elements in their community. We took decisions as to what we will do. But once we went in with these 2 girls, we discovered that that was just the tip of a very large iceberg. Those girls and the circumstances around them are replicated thousands of times. So I got the Ministry of Social Development through Minister Webster Roy involved the day after I met with those parents. And I told Minister Webster Roy, we, the government, using the taxpayers' money that is available to us and allocated to her ministry and mine, we and other ministries, Ministry of Sport, everybody, because it's a public health response, it's a whole of government response. We need to make an intervention. And yesterday, they made an intervention on the BSAM. I was out of the country. I came home last evening. And they had this outreach program inviting the entire community, largely women and girls, to come in. And I am aware that they are planning a series of other more direct engagements with individuals and with families to see how we can unravel some of the social crisis issues that are very much more prevalent than the average citizen might think, even including those living in those communities, because they probably have been born into some of it and perhaps in their little minds accept it as normal. So we are inside of it and working with women who have volunteered in those communities, in the Beatum on this particular occasion. And I hope that when we do this and it succeeds, we can replicate whatever learning we get from this across the entire Laventille West constituency and the greater Laventille and all of East Port-of-Spain, because take it from me, there is a serious level of social decay that has taken place in our communities, in this country, in all countries of the world. It is indeed a public health crisis. It is a public health issue. And the availability of guns and the corruption that supports it, including some state corruption, state agencies and elements, and the willingness of people for the sake of money, and the accessibility to ammunition. It is amazing. We have a lot of work in front of us. If we are to get back to any state of normalcy and social living and good living, and our youth don't have to be at the level of risk that they are now at. Because when the gunmen come now, it's whoever in the way, innocent people dying,
Yes.
Because when they had a single burst firearm, pow, pow, you get the first two, you still have a chance to take cover or run.
Mm-hmm.
But with the spray, you have less chance.
Yes.
So now we getting double murders, triple murders, quadruple murders. And I hope in all of this, because if you ask the wrong questions, you will never get the right answers. If you believe that all of this is the responsibility of one man, if you believed that COVID-19 was the responsibility of Dr. Parasram alone, or Minister Dayal Singh, you would be asking the wrong questions. You'll never get the right answer. Similarly, if you believe that the problems out there and the answers all come from Fitzgerald, and because I hold the office as Minister of National Security, of course. And I think the majority of people in Trinidad and Tobago, the large majority of people understand that. So it really requires serious collaborative effort and serious contributors and collaborators like your good selves, and the work must continue. This is why I said recently, quoting Bob Marley, at the end of this is not so much what has been said, but what has been done. And we all are called now to get to work if we have to get the Trinidad and Tobago that we claim to want. And we have to do that in sincerity, and we have to do that in truth, because there are a lot of people that cry out a lot and talk a lot, but they are contributors to the problems. Criminals, some of them, There are criminals that talk loud in this country, Criminals, So we have to deal with this. That's why I say it has to be done in spirit and in truth. And this is not an easy time, nor an easy thing. This is real.
Yes.
And as I told you before, to fight this fight, you have to be rooted and grounded in yourself, because it is a fight.
Now, a question was asked here, and I don't know if you can probably reach out to the Minister of Works and Transport, because Alasiri is saying here, good day, Mr. Hines, the Venezuelan migrants wish to work as cab drivers or on their own.
Or own their own cars.
Or own their own cars, but the licensing division does not recognize the MRF card. So is it something that can be sorted out?
The migrant registration framework set out clearly what they should enjoy, bearing in mind that we, Trinidad and Tobago, decided in our brotherly nation relationship with Venezuela to assist Venezuela and Venezuelans in their time of crisis. And we set out certain conditions in the MRF, the Migrant Registration Framework, by which we live. And the expectation is that they would be allowed to work and so on. Anything else has to be negotiated or settled. For the time being, we are confined to what now exists. And we are working steadfastly to that. We have allowed for re-registration, and now we are going further. We are now taking action to allow the children of the migrants to be accepted in all of the schools. They were accepted previously in the denominational schools, which the government funds, and to which the government had no objection. So we permitted that. Now the government is going further. All schools in the system will now be available to the migrant children to ensure that during their time in Trinidad and Tobago, they are not left to languish, undeveloped, to become part of the public health concern, either in Trinidad or in Venezuela at a later stage. Children deserve to be cared for, deserve to be educated. And therefore, in an understanding of that, we are now broadening the framework to allow their children to take a place in primary school, in the schools across the system.
Okay, so I'll say you heard that. So, but where are we now with the identification and testing bill? How was that?
Right, well, we started the debate.
Yes.
I presented it. There were a couple of speakers, maybe about 2 or 3. Stuart Young spoke quite powerfully on the matter. Keith Scotland spoke quite powerfully on the matter. I think we had a contribution being made by one of our speakers when the debate was adjourned on that particular evening, and we haven't been to Parliament since.
Right.
So when we go back out to Parliament, we will be continuing the debate. In the meantime, I took the opportunity to come here and to speak to the national community about it a couple of weeks ago, remember?
Yes.
And the work in this regard continues. So I really appreciate your question, because we are more affirmed in our feeling from the things that has happened since. Look,
yes.
You just spoke about the 14 officers.
14.
I mean, if they were, I mean, we should have been able to detect these possibilities before, had we the regime of the integrity testing that we are trying to put. So since then, even in the last 2 weeks, what you have just said to me gives us even more an ample suggestion or evidence or impetus to getting on with this. We are convinced that it is necessary.
It is. It is. And we really hope that you can come back to us again at some point and say, well, you know,
we have made it through, because we are asking for the support. It's as I told you on the last occasion, it's a special majority bill. It will affect elements of the Constitution. So we are expecting the opposition to lend their support to this. And we see no reason why they would not support it, because the leader of the opposition has called effectively for it, in the sense that she has been very condemnatory of the officers of the police service and other arms of law enforcement. And she went further in a written communication to criticize the magistracy. I don't know if the judiciary heard that, but I remember making a comment in this country about criminals seem to have friends everywhere. And it was interpreted as though I was speaking about a particular case, when in fact I was not. But I maintain the position. They seem to have friends everywhere. The leader of the opposition actually called the term in the same breath of corruption. The magistracy. I mean, we've had a magistrate in this country who was convicted for corruption, so she's not wrong. But the point is, she has expressed her concerns about corruption. And I said to her in the debate, there's no art to find the mind's construction by watching the face. So you have to be able to use the science available to you, whether it is voice stress recording, whether it is the eye scan, whether it is the polygraph test. You use the technology to determine whether the person is not speaking the truth, but by speaking, demonstrating elements of nervousness, on the understanding that that nervousness is a natural phenomenon with human beings when we know we are not speaking the truth.
There, yeah.
So we expect to get their support. And, well, Rodney Charles and a couple of them spoke, and they were talking issues around who will store the data and some pettifogging issues. We will deal with those pettifoggers. We will answer them. They have asked for regulations. We give them the assurance. No law operates without regulations. We'll sort those things out. Right. But we want to get this bill passed, and we need their support. And I'm anticipating it, quite frankly. Rogue and volatile and intellectually thin and bad-minded as they have proven to be, I still have the faith.
If you have any questions for the Minister, we have about 10 minutes before you wrap up. You could give us a call at 622-3937, and we have a chance to interact with him this morning in a different capacity. He's here with us, and we really appreciate his presence as we look at this day, International Men's Day. And at the same time, we want to congratulate you too, Minister, for carrying this load. You have proven to be that strength that from every direction people have been coming at you. You know, people make fun, they say this, but you stay in the course. And of course your Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, believes in you. And he believes that you can pull this off. And we want to thank you very much for staying the course, because you could have said, hey, I don't need this. And you move on, you know. We could have just wake up one morning and say, okay, you tell the Prime Minister, look, just send me somewhere else and get somebody else to run this ministry. You could have done that, right? You didn't. Yeah, and on International Men's Day, for what it's worth, we want to thank you for...
I thank you for that. It's pretty straightforward to me. I was born here. I benefited greatly from all that Mother Trinidad and Tobago offered, from education to its health services and all the many other things. Just my Trinidadianness makes me very proud. Trinbagonianness makes me very, very proud.
Right.
So I have benefited greatly from what she had to offer. And like you, I just feel it's necessary to give back. And I am in a position of public service now to give, to do. So I as I told you before, I understand the environment in which we work. I understand my society. I understand the culture. I understand the mores. I understand, among other things, that this is a very noisy place. But I heard David Rudder say once that he found it necessary to leave sweet, noisy Trinidad, my words, but to leave here and to go sometimes for some respite, to go to get away from the noise. David Rudder said that. And then I think about Christ, who went for 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness to get away from the maddening crowd. So I, in understanding that, have been able... Dr. Williams used to have a hearing aid, you know, and sometimes just so you just turn it off. You could talk what you want. You ain't that, you know.
Take it. Good morning.
So I turn off the noise and I remain focused on what is in front of me. I take it very seriously, and along with the cabinet, I am set for the work.
Hello, good morning.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Good morning.
Pleasant good morning to the minister, man. Pleasant good morning to your I-95 team. Mr. Minister, I want to join with the last few words, your guest. You are the guest. Your moderator there. And saying here, sometimes I ask myself, you know, Mr. Hines, we taking all the licks over. People say all kind of thing, but you're able to take that blows, man. You are a professional, man. And they say, stand up and taking your licks, and sometimes I laugh. I say, but they say all kind, you know. And sometimes people without even proper information, knowledge, just open their mouth, and you know, that is kind of like disgust you when you know the truth and you know the profession. And you know, one thing I want to suggest or recommend, you know, sometimes I find you administer your government just get unfair licks sometimes when they're trying to bring certain bills to parliament, because sometimes, you know, the John public, you know, well, you have those who just talk from the top of their head, but sometimes John public who really want to know what's going on in the details, sometimes I think the government will highlight certain things enough to John public, saying, you know, sometimes they get unfair criticism from the people who just speaking and don't even know what they're speaking about. So moving forward, I know sometimes due to our parliamentary system, you know, the government is charged with bringing certain bills to Parliament. But, sometimes maybe you may sometimes have a different approach where you may have a little consultation first, just to kind of like give them a little chance and to move forward. But I know that is the system, but sometimes maybe you have to think out of the box, in certain situations.
Hello?
Hello, good morning.
Oh, sorry, caller.
Mate.
Go ahead,
Yes,
caller.
the Minister of National Security. Mr. Hines, I tried to call to honor you, Fitzgerald Hines, yesterday, and Christian Ryan, the mighty bomber. In the area, how we grew up and so forth. But I enjoying your conversation this morning and what you have to tell us. And you're speaking some words that people don't even understand what you're trying to tell them if everybody do the same thing. Seek and you will find, knock and it shall be open unto you. Because you are looking for assistance to make a better Trinidad and Tobago at all costs. And that is what they realizing about there.
Yeah.
We grew up in Belmont and we had it tough as little fellas and we had to learn respect, not earn it, learn it.
You sound like Roy Capes.
And I'm glad to hear you're still strong and I want to honor you today again.
Give thanks, beloved. Thank you very, very much, man.
Thanks a lot, caller.
The formula is blood, sweat, and prayers.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
First I want to call my name. My name is Tansley Thompson.
Tansley
and I would like that I-95 could play this interview with Minister Hines for the entire national community to hear sometime again. I think it's very, very important that our national community, both local and abroad, should hear this interview with Minister Hines. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Thank you.
Thank you.
6223937, good morning. Hello?
Hi, good morning.
Morning. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Gart, and morning to Minister Hines. I just called to say Happy Men's Day, and I wish you success in whatever you do, Mr. Hines. I am PNM German from Arima, but I'm born and grown in Laventille. But I live in Arima now, but I dress all in red every day.
Yeah.
Red feet, red bed, everything red. I read and ready right through. Listen, stay strong, Minister.
You sound like if you feel there's more PNM than me.
Hello, good morning. Hello?
Good morning, good people.
Morning.
Morning.
Mr. Gas, Natasha, and I know we're coming up to the news. Mr. Hines, I am a person with a disability. My voice may sound familiar to you. But what I am concerned about is the pepper spray. I feel that persons with disabilities, once they can handle it, should be given the opportunity as a measure of protection. We can't hold a gun, some of us can't even hold a cutlass. But if you have a pepper spray, you could still try to ward off something. So I hope that will be given some kind of consideration as we move forward. Thank you.
Let me just ask for my own edification. Is it that you or other disabled persons have made application and it was turned down on account of your disability?
I think he's gone.
Oh, shucks.
I'll have to find out about that.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
I think
but-
that was Bawani Prasad.
But we have a program that Asha will.
I will inquire about that.
Let's take one more. Hello, good morning.
Good morning to God, Natasha, and your staff, and to Mr. Hines.
Good morning.
Morning to you, sir.
Morning, dear brother. Good morning.
All right. I have a thing to say.
Yeah,
Whom much
30
is
seconds. Go ahead.
Yes, much is required. And if people realize, according to the Prime Minister, the temerity of what it is you do, they wouldn't talk so much. They would just listen and let you do. I don't envy you, Mr. Hines, but I pray for your strength because somebody got to do it. And I am glad that it is you doing it, sir. So be encouraged. God bless you.
God bless you, dear brother. Thanks.
Yeah, well said. Hello? Take one more. Good morning. Hello? Good morning. Good morning.
Hello, good
yes.
morning.
Go ahead, ma'am, quickly.
Yes, good morning, God, Natasha,
Minister Hines, and I want to wish all of you gentlemen and Dr. Rowley happy International Men's Day. You all, God, you're doing good work. You're all carrying the burden of Trinidad and Tobago, like how Christ bore the cross, right? For us, the world at large, you all are bearing the cross of Trinidad and Tobago with all its challenges, and you all are standing up under all the pressures. So, happy International Men's Day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sister.
Thank you very much.
And I want to thank Tasha and Asher for continuing to support the men in your lives. And Minister, again, to share the sentiments of the chorus. If it's two people in Trinidad and Tobago who could testify to your journey, it's Garth and Natasha. Because I remember when we just started our independency, you found us on Rust and Gray Street. And they gave us our first check of $500. I said, this is towards our independence.
I didn't remember that.
No, I'm serious. That's what you did.
Yes.
And I want to thank you very much I want to thank who was Senator the Honorable Joe Newell Williams at the time for giving us this opportunity to start this journey on our independence. Today we 21 years, going on 22 years. And couldn't do it and without the blessings of good people like you all.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank
International Men's Day blip greetings to you too, and you are also an inspiration to me and to all of us. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Asher, Gary, thank you.
Who is always here, very quiet. And when you be doing biographies, and we're going to start with the minister and then come to you, and then hope we can get Dr. Rowley in here to tell, because biographies is what motivates people as well. We want to hear it. You see how the people didn't know you were a cab driver, they found out this morning. Who didn't know? Thank you very much, sir.
You can hire me again. Gotta pay tips, sir.
Good
afternoon.
Thank you very much, Gary. Major news up next with Mr. Steve.